I learned how disposable I was the moment my family walked away without turning around. One argument, one quiet decision, and suddenly I didn't exist anymore. It happened in an international terminal just before dawn, the kind of place where voices echo and time feels suspended. We'd arrived together hours earlier, pretending this trip was about healing. I'd paid for most of it: flights, hotel, meals. I told myself it was cheaper than therapy. That illusion shattered at the check-in counter. They wanted me to transfer more money immediately. I said not today. I said I needed to think about myself for once. The silence that followed was surgical. Then the words started coming. Soft at first, then sharper. Ungrateful, unstable, always dramatic. My younger sibling smiled while saying it, which somehow made it worse. At some point, without asking, my phone disappeared. Just for photos, she'd said earlier. My travel documents were already in my mother's hands, because it's easier if one person manages everything. I didn't question it. That was my mistake. I watched them collect their boarding passes. 3 tickets, not 4. When they turned toward security, I laughed under my breath, waiting for them to stop. They didn't. I followed, confused, until an agent blocked my path. My name wasn't on the manifest. The return ticket had been canceled, authorized by the account holder. They told me I could resolve it later, somewhere else. I stood there, throat dry, staring at the empty space where my life had just been erased. No phone, no documents, no one answering my name. I tried the service desk. My words came out clipped, controlled, rehearsed. The staff exchanged looks. Security shifted closer. That was when I felt it. That heavy awareness of being watched. He didn't rush. He didn't interrupt. He waited until the moment tipped from salvageable to irreversible. Then he leaned in, close enough that I caught the faint scent of expensive cologne. "Walk with me," he murmured. "My driver's pulling up. Say you're my wife." I didn't ask why. I didn't hesitate. My fingers closed around his sleeve before my brain caught up. As we moved, he added almost pleasantly, "Trust me, they'll regret what they did." The car waiting outside was black, silent, and impossibly calm. When the door shut, the terminal lights vanished behind tinted glass. My hands shook once, then stilled. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. We drove through unfamiliar streets, the city reduced to reflections. Only then did he speak. "You handled that better than most," he said. "Didn't beg, didn't cry, tried to solve it." I stared at the stitching on the seat. I ran out of options. "Exactly." A pause. "I need someone who understands that." He introduced himself. New name, clean vowels, American cadence, early 40s, property conglomerate, power worn lightly, like a tailored coat. I gave him a name that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. He explained it slowly, as if measuring my reactions. A public event back home. Investors who preferred neat stories. A widower image that had lingered too long. A younger relative whispering doubts in boardrooms. A temporary solution. A woman who could stand beside him without flinching. 2 weeks, he said. Appearances only. I watched the city slip past, felt something hard settle behind my ribs. My family thought they'd stranded me, taught me a lesson. They had no idea what kind of lesson I was about to learn. The word loss landed harder than it should have. It pressed into places I hadn't looked at since the divorce. Quiet mornings, empty closets, the slow realization that rebuilding alone had become my default setting. I murmured something polite. He acknowledged it with a brief nod, already moving past it, like a man trained not to linger where pain could soften him. "This isn't sentimental," he said evenly. "I need someone credible, not an actress, not someone who performs stability." The car drifted off the main road, the noise thinning, the world narrowing. I shifted in my seat as the implications settled. Out of everyone in that terminal, he'd chosen me, a stranger with no ticket, no phone, no witnesses. "You stayed composed," he added. "Most people don't." The vehicle slowed beside a private hangar, floodlights cutting through the dark. He didn't dress the offer up, no theatrics, just terms. "You attend the gala and a handful of related events. You leave with me tonight on my jet. You'll stay in my Manhattan residence. You get $50,000 in cash, a new phone, and access to information about why your family thought stranding you was a good idea." The number hit like a physical weight, not temptation, impact. It represented years of saying yes to everyone but myself. Still, I kept my voice steady. "And my risk?" He studied me, eyes sharp, unblinking. "Exposure. But we both signed silence. and I'm not untouchable. A pause. My brother's collecting evidence. Deals I made while distracted. He wants control. I need time. He wasn't asking for sympathy, just laying the cards out, clean and cold. That honesty mattered more than the money. One condition, I said. No real names. No personal history without my approval. He considered it, then extended his hand. Agreed. The handshake was firm, decisive. No room for regret. The jet waited on the tarmac, sleek and quiet, engines already humming. Inside, everything was muted. Leather, low light, absence of excess. I buckled in as fatigue finally clawed its way up my spine. Across from me, he opened a laptop, deliberately giving me space. For the first time since the terminal, no one was watching me fail. Sleep came fast. When I woke, pale light was bleeding across the horizon. New city, new rules. A car met us runway side and carried us straight into steel and glass. The building we stopped at rose without apology. The doorman nodded like this was routine. In the private elevator, he spoke softly. The housekeeper will show you to a suite. Rest. The penthouse unfolded in silence. Clean lines, endless windows. A city waking beneath us. The woman who guided me down the hall smiled kindly, said nothing unnecessary, left me alone with a view that made everything else feel small. I stood there longer than needed, watching traffic turn into movement without meaning. The choice I'd made finally registered. No one had forced it. That felt dangerous and powerful. The room was calm, crisp sheets, soft light. I showered until my skin tingled, changed into clothes laid out with quiet consideration. On the nightstand sat the new phone, glowing faintly. I picked it up and dialed the only number I trusted. She answered immediately, breathless. Where are you? They've been calling everyone. I'm safe, I said. In New York. Silence stretched. Then, cautiously. What did they tell you? I stared out at the skyline, jaw tightening as something dark and patient began to settle in my chest. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her breath came out slow, like she was choosing each word carefully. They told me you lost control, she said, that the pressure finally snapped something in you, that you were accusing them of schemes, acting paranoid, then just disappeared. My jaw locked. They're saying you're not thinking clearly, she continued, that you might hurt yourself or make reckless financial decisions. I stared at the glass wall, the city stretching endlessly below, suddenly feeling like I was the one on display. That's not what happened, I said. My voice sounded too calm. They canceled my ticket, took my phone. I know, she cut in softly. I believe you, but they're not stopping there. The pause before her next sentence felt deliberate, strategic. Your mother mentioned getting lawyers involved, something about protecting you from yourself, temporary conservatorship. The room tilted. They brought up the apartment, she went on, the one your grandparents left you. They're framing it like, if you're unstable, someone responsible needs to manage it before you ruin everything. Cold slid through my chest. That apartment wasn't just property, it was proof I'd built something without them. A 2-bedroom in a prime building, deeded solely to me because my grandparents had seen the hours, the discipline, the grind. They'd known exactly who they were protecting it from. They're gathering material, she said. Old emails where you vented after the divorce, doctor visits, anything that can be twisted into incapacity. I stood pacing, the carpet silent beneath my feet. For half a second, doubt crept in. The nights I'd canceled plans, the mornings I couldn't get out of bed, the moments I'd let stress show. Then it snapped into focus. This wasn't concern, it was choreography. Can you send me everything? I asked. My phone buzzed before she finished answering. Screenshots, draft messages, bullet-pointed concerns, carefully worded, calm, devastating. I scanned them once, then again. They weren't worried about me losing myself. They were preparing to take what I owned while painting themselves as rescuers. I thanked her, promised updates, and ended the call. The silence afterward pressed hard, not empty, loaded. I didn't go back upstairs. I went straight to the office. He looked up as I entered, already reading my posture. I handed him the phone without a word. His eyes moved quickly. The air changed. This is calculated, he said finally. They're framing instability, not disappearance. That makes it dangerous. They're going after my property, I replied, using my divorce as leverage. In this state, conservatorship isn't easy, he said, but it's possible if they argue risk to assets. They're laying groundwork. I leaned against the desk. We can't wait. He nodded once and reached for his phone. No hesitation. I'll call my attorney. An hour later, the lawyer arrived. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. He listened without interrupting, reviewed everything, then closed the tablet slowly. They're building a narrative, he said, but we can dismantle it. Medical evaluation if necessary. Financial records. We move first. Across the room, the man who'd pulled me from the terminal spoke quietly. My own family's questioning my capacity to grief, judgment. This isn't theoretical for me. That mattered more than reassurance. When the lawyer left with instructions, I returned to the guest room and opened the laptop waiting on the desk. I didn't skim, I studied. Statutes, petitions, requirements, timelines. The city glowed outside the window, distant and indifferent. I wasn't waiting anymore. Protecting what was mine meant acting before they could rewrite me. The preparations didn't ease in. They detonated. The morning he gathered his inner circle around the glass conference table, the room filled with tension disguised as professionalism. Screens glowed, coffee steamed, untouched. Contracts lay spread like evidence. No one looked at me directly, but no one questioned my presence either. I didn't wait for permission. Can I see the program flow? I asked, already pulling a chair closer. The coordinator slid the tablet over without hesitation. I scanned once, then again. My finger stopped. These two speakers are stacked too tightly, I said, tapping the screen. If one overruns, the entire evening collapses. Silence. Then I started moving things. Auction goes earlier. You want adrenaline before dinner, not after digestion. I marked notes quickly. Seat these two executives on opposite sides of the room. They smile in public and sabotage in private. A raised eyebrow, then a nod. Across the table, he watched without interrupting. Calculating. By the end of that meeting, rival factions were separated, potential allies clustered, and conversational landmines quietly diffused. When an email arrived from a major sponsor hesitating, phrases like leadership concerns and recent instability buried under politeness, I asked for the thread. I read it once, then rewrote the response in one draft. Calm, confident, specific, no defensiveness, just numbers, timelines, and inevitability. Send that, I said. The reply came back before lunch. Increased pledge, warmer tone. He pulled me aside afterward. You're making yourself difficult to replace. Good, I said. I didn't come here to be decorative. He laughed, short, genuine. The sound surprised both of us. From that point on, I was everywhere. I walked the venue myself, tracing guest flow, eliminating bottlenecks before they could become optics disasters. I argued with lighting until they agreed, warm tones to disarm, cooler focus for speeches. I stood my ground with florists, caterers, security. When voices rose, mine didn't. Late one night, budget sheets spread between us. He rubbed his temple and finally let something slip. I pushed a deal too fast after she died, he said. He's using it. I didn't comfort him. I leaned in. Then show correction, I said. Not remorse, recovery. He took it, used it. The board update shifted tone the next morning. We rehearsed relentlessly. Entrances, pauses, body language. We rewrote our origin story until it stopped sounding like one. Casual, forgettable, safe. He practiced jokes that didn't reach his eyes. I corrected him when they didn't need to. The night before the event, I walked the ballroom alone, checklist in hand. Every sign aligned, every contingency covered. There would be no surprises. Back upstairs, the dress waited. Deep navy, clean lines, nothing fragile about it. I studied my reflection. The woman staring back wasn't scrambling anymore. She was deciding. The ballroom roared the next evening. Flashing lights, crystal overhead, applause on cue. We moved as one when we entered. His hand steady at my back, my smile measured. Believable. Then, midway through cocktails, his phone vibrated. Once, he glanced down. The muscle in his jaw tightened, and just like that, the night shifted. The alert had already gone viral by the time I saw his expression change. Someone had resurrected the old rumors, headlines dripping with concern, quoting an anonymous insider whispering about emotional instability, impaired judgment, deals pushed through under grief. No names, no proof. Just enough smoke to poison the room. We both knew who had struck the match. The response went out fast. Clean denial, metrics, forward momentum, damage control at professional speed. It slowed the bleed, but it didn't stop the murmurs. I felt them shift before I saw them. One of the most conservative partners, the one whose signature mattered most, pulled back. His smile stayed polite, but his body closed, arms folded, feet angled away. When my partner approached him about finalizing the agreement, the conversation thinned into pleasantries. I watched from across the floor, reading the hesitation like a second language. I excused myself mid-laugh and crossed the room. "Mr. Caldwell," I said, voice smooth, extending my hand. "I've been coordinating the evening. I'm also involved with the project." He hesitated, then shook it. "I've heard of the proposal. Promising." "I imagine the article complicated things," I said lightly. "Off the record, those sources benefit from doubt. The numbers don't." I already had the data open, projections I'd insisted be ready for this exact moment. I angled the screen discreetly. Revised occupancy, risk adjustments already implemented, cash flow rebounding this quarter. His eyes tracked the screen, brows lifted. These figures weren't public yet. "They're real," I added. "Setbacks were addressed, not ignored. That's why this partnership still works." He glanced across the room, where my partner stood laughing with donors like nothing was burning. The hesitation lingered. "We've added oversight clauses," I said gently. "Built-in checkpoints. Long-term return still clears market by double digits." He handed the phone back slowly. "Let's talk after the auction." The rest of the night smoothed out. Bidding surged. Applause landed where it was meant to. The contract was signed before dessert. Tighter terms, yes, but signed. In the car afterward, city lights streaking past, he loosened his tie and exhaled. "That article will feed his case," he said quietly. "External doubt affecting deals." "The contract closed," I replied, watching the window. "Despite it." "Because of you." He paused. "But it's not enough. I need something stronger, something courts and boards can't ignore." He turned fully toward me. "Marry me, on paper, 1 year." The words were blunt, practical, heavy. I didn't blink. "Terms?" I asked. He listed them calmly. Compensation, continued role, legal protections, for both of us. Shields against families who liked courts more than conversations. I added my own. Exit anytime. No explanations. Control of my public image. Choice of name after dissolution. He studied me, then nodded. All of it. The paperwork was anticlimactic. Fluorescent lights, a clerk who didn't care, stamps, signatures, no vows, just ink. I folded the certificate carefully. This wasn't rescue. It was armor. We relocated quietly soon after, far enough from the city to let noise fade. Glass walls, dunes, ocean. Space to breathe while scrutiny lingered elsewhere. Standing there, watching waves erase their own tracks, I understood something clearly. Every move from here on would be deliberate. The arrangement stopped being temporary almost immediately. By the time the coastal project moved from concept to reality, I was no longer observing. I was embedded. Strategy sessions became routine. Market reports stacked beside architectural drafts. One afternoon, sunlight pouring across the desk, I slid a packet toward him. "Competitor feedback shows a gap," I said. "Guests want restoration, not just luxury. Expand wellness. Seasonal occupancy jumps." He read silently, then sent the notes to the architects that same hour. The revisions followed within days. Design calls blurred into long discussions, where I pushed for flow over flash, wider pathways, flexible indoor-outdoor transitions, weatherproof movement without friction. I'd seen how high-end guests reacted to inconvenience. They didn't complain, they disappeared. The lead designer adjusted. No argument. Then the legal front tightened. The attorney called mid-afternoon, voice clipped. "Your family filed, preliminary petition." I didn't sit down. They were recycling fragments, old emails venting about exhaustion, a few canceled appointments, moments stripped of context and presented as instability. Thin but enough to trigger a hearing, I pulled records immediately: performance evaluations, tax filings, client testimonials, evidence of consistency, of control. "File all of it," I said, "and affidavits." The response stalled momentum on their end, not stopped, slowed. That mattered. On the other side, pressure escalated. His brother filed formally, the same playbook, One bad deal, public whispers, a pattern manufactured from grief, nights stretched, documents covered the table under warm lamps. I organized audits, board minutes, recovery timelines, proof that mistakes had been corrected, not repeated. One evening, exhaustion finally cracked through his posture. He set a folder down and stared at nothing. I rushed it, he admitted. That deal. Staying busy felt safer than going home. I slid a revised timeline toward him. Then we show what came after. The fixes, the safeguards, the discipline. He followed every step, strengthened every argument. We challenged each other without softening the truth. Trust formed there. Quiet. Earned. The ocean outside the study windows erased its own tracks as we worked. The final call came during a break. Speaker on. They found the marriage, the attorney said. Public records. They think it proves manipulation. They've booked flights. They want to intervene. The line went dead. The doorbell rang the next morning, sharp, insistent. The housekeeper appeared at the doorway, voice low. They're here. I set the blueprints down. He stood immediately. I'll stay out of sight, he said. This is yours. I nodded and walked to the foyer alone. The attorney waited nearby, briefcase closed but ready. The door opened. 3 figures stepped in. No embraces, no relief, just expectation. You've gone too far, the man in front said, voice controlled, rehearsed. I met his gaze without blinking, and understood this wasn't a visit. It was a confrontation they thought they could still win. Marrying a stranger, my mother said sharply, hiding out here like you're above us. We came to bring you home. I didn't move. I didn't uncross my arms. Home? I asked. You mean the version where I stop asking questions and sign things I'm not supposed to read? She inhaled through her nose. Your mental state isn't stable. We're trying to protect you. By filing for conservatorship, I replied. Let's call it what it is. My father stepped forward, jaw set. You vanished overseas, no contact. We had to act. That apartment, your grandparents left it to you, yes, but you decided I couldn't be trusted with it, I finished. Funny how concern always circles back to property. My sister stood slightly behind them, eyes glued to the floor. I turned just enough to gesture toward the man waiting silently near the wall. My attorney has everything, I said. The drafts you circulated, the claims of incapacity, all based on old emails written during my divorce. The briefcase opened. Documents slid onto the table with a quiet finality. No medical diagnosis, my lawyer said calmly. No recent incidents, no legal threshold met. My mother's face flushed. You're being played. That man is using you to shield his own mess. I met her stare without blinking. He isn't the one trying to seize my inheritance. My father moved closer. We raised you. You owe us respect. You lost that, I said evenly, when you planned the airport stunt. Took my phone, held my documents, canceled my ticket, and walked away. Silence cracked. My sister finally looked up. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I turned to her fully. You borrowed my phone. She kept my passport. You all boarded without a word. That was coordinated. Her eyes filled. Dad said it was the only way to make you listen. I shook my head slowly. You let them use you. My father cut in, voice hard. Enough. Come back. We'll drop everything if you sign management of the apartment over to us. I slid a single page across the table. Here's my counteroffer. Withdraw the petition today, issue a public statement admitting it was unfounded. I won't pursue fraud, coercion, or emotional damages. My mother laughed sharply. You wouldn't sue your own family. I looked at each of them in turn. Test me. For a heartbeat, my sister hesitated. Something flickered across her face. Doubt, regret, fear. She opened her mouth, then closed it, stepping back into line. My father shook his head. You're not who we raised. I'm exactly who you ignored, I replied quietly. They left without another word. My sister paused at the door, glanced back once, eyes raw, then followed them out. The silence afterward pressed down hard. I'll file the counter motion today, my attorney said, already gathering papers. When the hallway cleared, the man I'd married stepped into view. You didn't hesitate. I'm done waiting for them to do the right thing, I said. Back in the study, I opened my laptop and started drafting the complaint. Fraud, manipulation, breach of trust. Each word felt deliberate, final. The ruling came faster than they expected. Medical evaluations, financial records, professional affidavits. The judge dismissed the petition outright, noting it appeared motivated by asset control, not concern, no penalties. But the record remained. Word traveled, quietly, invitations stopped, old acquaintances looked away. Control had been their weapon. Visibility became mine. Their fall wasn't loud, it was quieter than that, more humiliating. Invitations stopped arriving. Conversations ended mid-sentence when they entered rooms they once controlled. In the gated retirement circle they'd ruled for years. Smiles tightened, whispers followed, and people suddenly remembered appointments whenever my parents approached. Respect drained slowly, publicly, with no one to blame but the record they'd created themselves. My sister felt it too. Subtle at first, fewer callbacks, colleagues hesitating before looping her into decisions, judgment questioned without being spoken aloud. No one accused her of anything directly. They didn't have to. They'd lost their leverage. Over me, over the apartment, over the story they thought they could tell. The property remained untouched. Mine, exactly as my grandparents intended. Weeks later, an email arrived. No preamble, no justifications. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." She wrote about sleepless nights, about realizing too late that silence can be an action, about how standing behind our parents had felt easier than standing alone. She said she wished she'd spoken up that day, that maybe things could have been different. I read it twice, then I closed it. Some bridges don't need closure, they need distance. The marriage ended exactly as planned. No surprises, no emotions dragged into filings, papers signed, names separated. The legal shield dissolved, but its purpose remained fulfilled. Every threat neutralized, every angle closed. He won his battle too. The board reviewed the period they'd tried to weaponize and saw something else entirely: stability, correction, leadership under pressure. His brother's challenge collapsed under its own theatrics. Power doesn't like being exposed, it retreats. We didn't part dramatically, we didn't pretend there was something more. Just mutual respect, occasional messages. A clean ending that didn't sour the beginning. I built something of my own after that. Not overnight, not loudly, but fast enough to feel dangerous. One referral became three. One event turned into a calendar filled months ahead. Corporate launches, private fundraisers, weddings where nothing was allowed to go wrong. The kind of work where silence after execution is the highest compliment. The apartment transformed with me. Downstairs became workspace, glass, light, open lines. Upstairs stayed private, calm, untouched by anyone else's expectations. Every renovation choice deliberate, nothing inherited except ownership. Success felt different when it wasn't borrowed or approved. It didn't buzz, it settled. He visited once, months later, for a consultation. We walked along the shoreline afterward, shoes in hand, waves doing what waves do, erasing, returning, repeating. "You built something real," he said. "So did you," I replied. That was all that needed saying. Years later, during the largest event my firm had ever handled, I stepped away from the crowd for a moment. Music carried softly behind me. Glass clinked. The ocean stretched out ahead, steady, indifferent, perfect. Family loyalty, I realized, isn't guaranteed. Sometimes it fractures beyond repair. But self-worth doesn't come from blood. It comes from boundaries. Walking away wasn't abandonment. It was survival with intention. It was choosing to stop negotiating my value, to build without asking permission, to surround myself with people who stayed because they wanted to, not because they felt entitled. That was the inheritance that mattered, knowing when to leave, and how to build something stronger once you do.